what's up guys, Cave Productions here, and what I have in my hands are the Xbox Elite Controller Series 2. Today I won't be doing a review of this controller, but rather how I feel about this controller after using it for more than a year, and what are some troubles and issues I have had with this controller. Also, I'll be telling you why this might be potentially the worst quality controller ever made by Xbox. Well, at least for the controllers that you buy here in Singapore. So without further ado, let's get into it. I first purchased this Elite Controller Series 2 over a year ago, somewhere either at the end of 2019 or the beginning of 2020. Honestly, I forgot, so I'm very sorry about that, but I have been using this controller ever since, and it's really hard to go back to a standard controller due to how feature-packed this controller is. It has things like a built-in rechargeable battery, which is very convenient, but it also raises the issue of it not being user replaceable, which means that when the battery does fail or no longer holds a good amount of charge, you would have to send it into Microsoft to get it changed. Other features do include it having 4 pedals below the controller where your fingers nicely rest for easy pressing, and adjustable resistance for the thumbsticks, as you can see over here, where there is a tool where you can adjust the resistance of the thumbsticks when you do push them. The thumbsticks are also replaceable and swappable, which are nice, and there is a D-pad that you can also take out to change out for another standard T-shaped D-pad to use. The triggers do also have 3 settings. There are the full triggers, as you can see over here, but there are also a medium trigger and a hair trigger or short stop triggers. These features do make this controller very versatile for whatever game you want to play. For example, if you want to play an FPS like Halo 5, you can set the triggers to the short stop or the hair triggers so that you don't have to press so much when you want to fire. For a game like Forza Horizon 4, you may want to set it to the full trigger mode because you want more control when you are accelerating or decelerating and braking. The pedals also give you the opportunity to do things that traditionally only PC players could do, such as mapping the buttons to the pedals. For example, you can map the A button, which is traditionally the jump button in FPS and many games, to one of the pedals behind. This means that I can move around and look around while pressing A at the same time, which means that I can jump and look around and not have to lift my thumb off the thumbstick here so that I can jump. I can just turn and jump at the same time. Or I can turn, reload, switch weapons, and so on and so forth, because I can map these 4 buttons to these 4 pedals below. The amount of versatility turned me from a mediocre player to a somewhat average player in games like Halo 5 and Destiny 2, which I am very thankful for. Oh, and did I mention that you can even customize what each button can do in the accessories app on Xbox, which means you can technically map a D-pad up to a right bumper or even a left thumbstick press to a trigger press. The amount of versatility you have is quite limitless in the Xbox app. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about the amount of customizations and every single combinations you can do with the controller, but I just want you to know that you can customize almost every aspect of this controller, which is very nice. So after a whole year of use, how is this controller and how has it aged? Well, for one, the thumbsticks are starting to show some wear, which is quite normal for any Xbox or even PlayStation controller, depending on how much you play games, of course. The whole construction of the controller, which has a very soft finish primarily on the top and bottom and a rubber finish on the grips, are starting to show a bit of wear as well, a bit of wear down from where you do hold on to the controller and where you do press buttons. The metal parts of the controller are still quite nice and pretty new, but that's because they are made of stainless steel, which is quite durable, and they do not rust at all, which is good. I did notice some weird things with the controller after a year of usage, such as my left thumbstick starting to get pretty loose. As you can see, you can wiggle them left and right and up and down a bit more than I would like it to. This is compared to a new Elite controller. As you can see over here, the thumbstick almost has 0 movement. So the left thumbstick is starting to get a bit loose, which can be a problem. The right thumbstick as well. Now this is a problem because when you play games like Apex Legends on Xbox, the thing is, Apex Legends does register just the slightest move of a thumbstick, which means that if my thumbstick is leaning to the left a bit, my character will actually move to the left because it is registering as a movement. So it is not really possible to set the thumbstick to a neutral position due to how much it can move on its own. So in Apex Legends, this is very annoying, and I do have to set a dead zone for the left thumbstick in Apex Legends. Another issue I am facing with this controller is the right bumper. The right bumper is quite finicky these days, and for the most part, the right bumper isn't very sensitive anymore and requires me to press pretty hard for it to register. And sometimes when it does register, it double registers, which can be quite annoying, especially in games like Destiny 2 if you're playing a hunter which has 2 knife throws. So at this point, many of you might be asking, why didn't I just send this controller into Microsoft for a replacement or repair, since it's only about a year plus old and it is still covered by warranty? Well, that's because I actually voided the warranty of this controller. I'll let you know in a while why I did so, when I do explain how this controller has some of the worst quality control I've ever seen in a product, which even rivals the quality control of the trackpads on the Dell XPS 15. Anyways, I voided the warranty by opening the controller up, which explains the marks that you can see at the bottom of the controller, as I did have to pry the controller open from here. And because I did so, Microsoft probably wouldn't be willing to repair this controller for me or have it replaced for free. So then, that's my experience of using this controller for about a year. It does definitely show some wear, but I will still definitely use this due to the fact that it is very versatile and is definitely a lot more comfortable to use as compared to a standard controller. The only thing that's not so comfortable about this controller compared to a standard Xbox controller is that it is a bit heavier due to the metal construction and due to the inbuilt battery. Now let's move on over to why this controller has some of the worst quality control I've ever seen. Now throughout this video, you have seen footage of an Elite Controller Series 2 that looks brand new and one that's pretty worn. These two aren't the same controller, as you can clearly see. The footage of the new controller you see here is actually a replacement of a new Series 2 controller that I purchased quite recently. Now here's the confusing part. The footage of the new controller that you see over here is actually footage of different replacement controllers and not just this one, because I have sent the controller back multiple times for a new replacement over and over again. So why did I send my newly bought Series 2 controller in to Microsoft multiple times? Because A, I did not open this controller up, which means that it is still in warranty, and B, I have this old Series 2 controller which I can use while waiting for this one when I do send it in. Okay, that's cool and all, but what is the reason for me having to send in the controller in the first place? Well, because the Elite Series 2 controller has a serious issue with quality control of the right trigger. Yeah, that is a very big problem. I'll explain. The right trigger of the Elite Series 2 controller has as you've already heard, a horrible and unbearable creaking sound and feel to it when I am using the trigger on the short stop, or the hair triggers. And even though you can hear it, it's not just the fact that it's audible. You can actually feel it too when you are pressing it, which is very distracting when you are gaming. This also happens on the middle stop mode, but it isn't as audible or you don't really feel it as much as compared to the short stop. It also doesn't happen at all on the full trigger mode for every replacement I've sent in the original controller, which is quite normal, but for some reason on the middle and short stop there is this very unbearable creaking sound. And for some odd reason, for all my replacements and original controller, this only happens on the right trigger. The left trigger is completely spared from this problem for some reason. This may be an indication that the right trigger is not simply a mirror of the left trigger and vice versa. But this is also an indication of horrible build quality and quality control, as not one of my replacement controllers, except for one, had a properly working right trigger. The one replacement controller that had no such issue did have a slight creak but was nowhere near as bad as this. But the problem with that replacement controller and why I sent that one in was because the A button would get stuck, which meant that, well, obviously you want a working A button because, well, you paid full price for this controller and so you want it to fully work. So I'm currently on my 6th or 7th replacement controller depending on when I upload this video, but I also did lose count, to be honest, and so I can't really tell you which replacement controller this one is. Unfortunately, after how many replacements I have replaced the controller, it still has the same problem. So back to why I opened up my controller that I purchased last year. It was because I was fed up of receiving replacements just like the one that I'm currently replacing right now, as I just wanted to use my controller. So I took matters into my own hands and I did open the controller up. And I did land on a fix, which was to lubricate a small circle thing that you can see in an edit over here, where the trigger actually hits when you do press it. I lubricated it with some oil, and that officially stopped the trigger from creaking. This came at the cost of me losing my right to have Microsoft ever repair it again for free, because they couldn't solve a problem that the controller had to begin with. Now that I purchased a new controller, however, I am determined to keep sending that new replacement controller in over and over and over again until Microsoft gives me a fully working and functional non-creaky right trigger controller. I don't know when that will be, but I will have an update video if I ever get a fully working controller. If not, you can assume that I never got a fully working controller and I kept getting one with a creaky right trigger. Now, to be honest, I don't know how widespread this issue is, but if you are from outside of Singapore and do own an Elite Series 2 controller with this problem, do let me know down in the comments if you do suffer from this. Until then, I do highly discourage anyone in Singapore from purchasing an Elite Series 2 controller no matter how feature-packed this controller is, because I have already purchased two of these controllers and they both have the exact same defect. This is honestly some of the worst quality control I've ever seen in a product, which is extremely disappointing since it comes from such a big company like Microsoft. You'd think that they will actually look into this issue after more than a year and try to fix it, rather than send me over and over again a broken controller with a creaky right trigger. Also, before I do end this video, I do want to point out that there are other defects that I had found in the replacements, such as some of the replacements that I have, like this replacement that I have here, has a D-pad that's kind of leaning to the left, which means that there is this space on the right side of the D-pad, which is kind of odd in my opinion. Also, I had one defect that I did mention earlier that had a stuck A button. So those are some defects I have noticed with the replacement controllers. But other than that, the replacement controllers do look like brand new ones as a whole, which is good because I did buy a new controller and I sent it in almost immediately after buying it due to the creaky right trigger, and so I think it's only fair that I do get a new controller as a replacement. But all these, what I think are new controllers, still have the creaky right triggers, which is honestly quite amazing in my opinion. But anyways, I think I'll sum up this video over here, and so if you did like this video, do give it a thumbs up, and if you disliked it, do give it a thumbs down. If you're Microsoft and you're watching this video, then I do ask that you please look into this matter for the sake of your customers who purchase these controllers. I already bought two and they both have the same problem, and I'm not sure if other people out there might have also bought some of these controllers and had the same issue as well but chose to keep quiet. If you're not Microsoft, then please do subscribe and hit the bell notification icon, as it really does help this channel out. Share this video if you found it useful as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.